All right. I'd like to start off by saying Barakatah Yahawah, Ba'ashem Yahawahshi, Ba'ashem Rakakodash. Welcome to another live stream. All right. The name of this one's called Judah and Ephraim, both under the curses. Because, you have this misconception out there that all the tribes, all 12 tribes are so-called Negroes, and that's it. You had this misconception that only the so-called Negroes or the so-called Negro tribes, which is comprises of the Southern Kingdom, were the only ones that went through hell, the only ones that went through curses, the only ones that caught any type of hell. They were the only ones that were in captivity. They were the only ones that suffered, violence under the hand of the so-called white man, the Edomites. They were the only ones that were persecuted by Esau. They were the only ones that had a hard time feeding their families. They were the only ones that had a hard time getting jobs. They were the only ones that had a hard time in their relationship with their women. They were the only ones that had drug addictions. They were the only ones that had alcoholic addictions. They were the only ones that suffered, that had to be on food stamps, that had to be looked down upon, stepped upon, and so on and so forth. But that's not true. The so-called Puerto Ricans, since they got into this country, been catching hell too. And even before Judah, Benjamin, and Levi came over to the soils of America, the Northern Kingdom was already catching hell up under the so-called white man, being put in captivity and slavery, going through all type of hell. And this is one of the things that used to piss me off in the world, that Judah would always do that. Like, they would act like they were the only ones that were catching hell. And they would just pretty much just throw us in a corner somewhere, like we wasn't catching hell. Like we was just, just there going along, getting along. Everything was fine and hunky-dory with us, but it wasn't. We were catching just as much hell as you are. And we were catching hell before you even got here. How about that? It's no coincidence that during the time of the so-called civil rights movement, it was Judah in the forefront. You had Ephraim, you had Issachar, you had Gad. Because these people were being persecuted. Why? Because they were Israelites. And they were standing up and trying to do something about their situation and about the situation of their people. But they didn't understand back then that they were Israelites, but they didn't understand that. So when they came together under false pretenses, or they came together not under so much as false pretenses, but they came up under the wrong covering. Matter of fact, let's start off with that. Let's go to, I believe that's Isaiah 31. Nope. Let's try Isaiah 30. Yep. Isaiah chapter 30, verse 1. Woe to the rebellious children. Who are the rebellious children? The children of Israel, saith the Lord, Yahawahshi, that take counsel, but not of me, because they've counseled among themselves. They try to set up certain situations. They try to set up religious movements. They try to set up social movements. They try to set up revolutionary movements. But it was all without the Most High. Some of them used the Bible, but still didn't have the full understanding of the Bible. It says, and that cover with the covering. So they have a cover over them. Just like Adam and Eve in the garden, what did they do? They sold themselves fig leaves and aprons. Meaning what? They started to put on the garb of the other nations. Just like you see today, Jake wearing dashikis, or Jake's dressing like the so-called Muslims, or like the so-called, whatever religion they're into, whether it's Buddhist, whatever other religion that Jake gets into, they dress up the part. And this is what happened. They put a cover. They covered themselves with a covering, but not of my spirit, because it wasn't according to the Most High's plans. See, they had on a different covering, when our covering the whole time was Yahawah, Ba'ashem Yahawahshi. But we lost our way. Scripture said that we would discontinue from our heritage, beginning with once we lost our land, everything else was lost after that. Because after a while, we lost our way, and that's a good precept, the brother. The kingdom is within Deuteronomy 28:43. The stranger that is within thee shall get up above thee very high. And I have that in the the curses which I want to go through the Spirit, and thou shalt come down very low. And this is where we're at. That they may add sin to sin. They'll walk down to go into Egypt and have not asked at my mouth. So they're not asking at the counsel of the mouth of the Lord. They're asking at the counsel of Egypt or Babylon or the Middle Persian Empire when they were there, or the Romans or the Greeks. And today, under the American government or wherever on the planet they are scattered to. And this video was inspired through the Spirit of Yahawahshi through a video Elder Apostle Gabar sent me last night. I couldn't really watch it because I was pretty tired. So I was trying to get some rest so I can get up and do a few things that I got to do. So I was watching it today while I was doing my little walk. And when you go to this documentary, it's called 60s in Connecticut. And it's pretty much a documentary on prosperity and how Esau in the 60s, they were doing really good. They had nice homes. They had, nice jobs, and their women would stay at home, and they had cars, and they had this and that, and prosperity was great among Esau. But then when you get to the 7 minute and 45 second mark, that's where Jake, it says, but not everybody was benefiting from this great economic growth. And they showed Jake and Ephraim, the so-called Negroes and the so-called Puerto Ricans, moving into Connecticut in the 60s into these dilapidated areas that Esau fled from. Because at this point, all of the factories, the manufacturing factories that were here that made this state so great started moving out. So Judah was catching hell. They couldn't find jobs. Ephraim was catching hell. They couldn't find jobs. Judah couldn't feed their families. Ephraim couldn't feed their families. They turned to drugs. They turned to alcohol. They turned to all different type of shit just to be able to survive. They were at the bottom of the totem pole together. Because let's go from there to the book of Isaiah, chapter 3. And verse, just bear with me while I find this verse. I'm sorry, not Isaiah, Jeremiah 3, my bad. Jeremiah 3 and 18. In those days the house of Judah shall walk with the house of Israel, and they shall come together out of the land of the north to a land. So like I think I might have skipped it. It might be in Jeremiah 50. Let's see something. Just bear with me 1 second. Okay, Jeremiah 50 and 33. Thus saith the Lord power of hosts, the children of Israel and the children of Judah were oppressed together, and all that took them captives held them fast. They refused to let them go. And that's what you see. When you watch this documentary, you watch other documentaries that kept speaking about the so-called Negroes, so-called African American, which is a tribe of Judah, and the so-called Puerto Ricans, which is a tribe of Ephraim. And they were both in these dilapidated situations. They were both in these bad conditions. They were both catching hell equally. You see? So this is proof that they are Israelites, because the scripture said, let's go straight to the point and then we'll jump up above that. Deuteronomy 28 and 45. Moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee. And we're gonna examine some of these curses, and shall pursue thee. What does it mean to come upon thee? Meaning they're gonna be on you wherever you go, and shall pursue thee. Meaning if you live in Connecticut and you live in the ghetto and you happen to be a so-called Negro, Latino, Native American Indian, and you move to another state, these curses will follow you wherever you go. No escaping this. Like the beating us, the song that they did, no escaping us. It's true. You can't escape the curses. It says, moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee and shall pursue thee and overtake thee till thou be destroyed. Meaning what? Destructured. And what is the main thing that destroyed Jake? Well, let's go real quick. You know what? Let me keep that because I may read that again. Let's go to the book of Hosea, chapter 4, verse 6. My people are destroyed for what? For lack of knowledge. So what destroyed Jake? The lack of knowledge. Why did we go into captivity? Because we forsook the Lord. What is that? Isaiah 5 and 13. It says, therefore my people are gone into captivity because they have no knowledge. And their honorable men are famished, and their multitude dried up with thirst. So the honorable men, the ones that are supposed to be the leaders, at one time had no wisdom. They had nothing to feed the flock with. So what did they do? They turned to beating the flock, to cheating the flock, so that they can live better lives, so they can be in a better position. Meanwhile, the flock was suffering, and they still weren't really being fed with the truth. And their multitude dried up with thirst. Why? Because there was no living waters flowing out in these streets back then. I mean, there were, but it was slowly but surely coming up. It was on a come up. So going back, it says, moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee and shall pursue thee and overtake thee till thou be destroyed. And we were destructed. We were brought down to the lowest place where a human could go. Let's go to Daniel chapter 9 and verse. Just want to get straight to the point. I'm not sure what the exact verse is. Let me just type this in. All right. Here, Daniel 9 and 12. And he hath confirmed his words which he spake against us and against our judges that judge us. What is that? These curses that were to come upon us, by bringing upon us a great evil, for under the whole heaven hath not been done as hath been done upon Jerusalem. So we caught hell. So these curses came upon us and pursued us and overtook us until we be destroyed, until we were destroyed. Just like if you go to war and you have one side that's getting the better of the other side, and the other side starts fleeing, and then the army that was winning starts chasing them and beating them down and capturing them. They overthrew them and then did what? Destroyed them. So these curses attacked us like a military from the Lord. This was like the curses are like another army of the Most High that came with they came prepared, and they kicked us in the ass. So-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native American Indians. And you talk about doing bad. You look in the reservation camps where the so-called North American Indian are. They're living worse than any ghetto or barrio out there. And this was their land at one time. They're living in worse conditions than you are living in the projects or in the barrios. How about that? They're almost living like if they were in a third world country. They're so poor out there. It's so poor out there that they got a result of going to the store, the little bit of money they get from the government, and buying hair products that have alcohol in them to drink it just so that they can get high. I'm talking about the so-called Negroes are the only ones that caught hell in this country and the only ones that went into captivity. That shit got to stop, man. That shit got to stop. It says, because thou hearkenest not unto the voice of the Lord thy power, to keep his commandments and his statutes which he commanded thee. And that's the bottom line. Because we didn't do what the Lord said, he kicked us in the ass. And when you watch this documentary, it doesn't really go a whole lot into Jake and Ephraim, but it does, have a little here and there. Because pretty much it was a documentary on Connecticut in the 60s. And this is just in one state. This was happening throughout all the different states where Judah and Ephraim were. Because even in Chicago, you had Ephraimites in Chicago. Of course, you had Judahites in Chicago. You had Issacharites in Chicago, which they called Chicanos. And they were gathering together, revolutionary type individuals to speak against the injustices of the government upon their people. Meanwhile, not realizing that we were all one people. And I'm pretty sure that some of them understood that we're in the same struggle together. But not all of them. So let's go back to Deuteronomy 28. Let's go to the 15th verse now. It says, "But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy power, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee." And you see it. You see it all throughout the ghettos and the barrios, all throughout America, all throughout Canada, Central, South America, the Caribbean islands, and wherever Jake is at. You see him catching nothing but hell. And shalom to the Akim on the common boards. They're catching nothing but hell. It says, "Curse shall thou be in the city, and curse shall thou be in the field." Every city you go in America, let's just deal with America. Not even dealing with Canada and Central America, South America, Mexico, the Caribbean islands, and throughout the world where Jake is at. Every city you go to, there's what? Slums, ghettos, barrios. And who's up in there? So-called Negroes, Latinos, Native American Indians. Now you're starting to have Esau catching hell, and some of them so-called white trash might even be Jakes. Because some of them are suffering the curses. But then again, we're at the point now where the curses are starting to be lifted off of Jake a little bit and coming up on the other nations too. And curse shall thou be in the field. What's the field? The field is the world. Throughout the four corners of the earth, curse shall be thy basket and thy store. What is the basket in your store? The basket is your pockets. Every time you try to save some money, what happens? Something happens where money dwindles. Sometimes you have to choose between paying bills or eating. And curse shall thou be in the field, meaning in the world, and thy store represents what? Your bank accounts. If Jake has bank accounts, a lot of them barely have anything in there. They just got enough money in there to keep the thing open, and maybe use their card to pay bills with. It says, "Curse shall be the fruit of thy body," which is what? The children. "And the fruit of thy land, the increase of thy kind, and the flocks of thy sheep." This is when Jake was sharecroppers. You got down in the islands. There was a time when there was few storms that came through, and the working that they were doing out there in the fields, they couldn't do shit. So what happened? They had to ship them out of Puerto Rico and ship them all the way over through the United States into the Polynesian islands, Hawaii and all of them places. That's where you got a lot of them Polynesians out there, so-called Polynesians, that have Spanish last names. Because a lot of Ephraimites were sent out there. And what do you think they did with those women? They had sex with them and had children. "Curse shall be thou when thou comest in, and curse shall thou be when thou goest out." When you're born, you're cursed. When you die, you're cursed. "The Lord shall send upon thee cursing, vexation, and rebuke." And that's all that happened. You watch that movie, Dead Presidents. In that movie, you see nothing but the hell that Jake was going through. And you see who was there, who was the main two characters there, who was the main two tribes, Judah and Ephraim. They were doing so bad. What they did, they got together to rob a bank. Because they were catching hell. Together. "In all that thou settest thine hand unto for to do." So everything that you do in this country, in this society, the Lord is going to put cursings upon it, vexations upon it, and rebuke. You might be the best carpenter out there, but there's days you go to the job and shit ain't working right. You build a wall, the shit come out crazy. You cut something, the shit don't come out right. You've done this shit 100 times, and then when you're trying to do it that day, it just ain't coming out right. It's just a fucked up day, but that's those curses. "Until thou be destroyed, and until thou perish quickly." And that's what happens. We've been destroyed. That's why a lot of Jakes turn to what? To drugs and alcohol. To escape. It's a form of escapism. Because sometimes, the mind can't handle this certain situation. So what do Jake do? They turn to the bottle on the shelf. Or sometimes, they turn to drugs until thou perish quickly. And you see a lot of Jakes dying early. Lung cancer, colon cancer, pancreatic cancer, getting shot by the cops, so on and so forth, dying of heart attacks because of the wickedness of thy doings. But this is why, whereby thou hast forsaken me. So we forsook the Lord, so the Lord forsook us. But Barakatah Yahawah, he left the remnant, and now we're coming back to please the Lord to the best of our ability. Now let's jump down to the 29th verse. And thou shalt grope at noonday. Roaming aimlessly. Did not the Lord say that you will be in the corners? Jake would be on the corners, acting wild like animals, pretty much. There's no coincidence that the so-called Negroes and Latinos are the ones up on them corners like that. The so-called North American Indians, so on and so forth. As the blind gropeth in darkness. Why? Because you're not technically blind, but spiritually you are. Talking about this cipher and that cipher, and talking about the 5%ers and talking about Islam and the Moors and, Egyptology and this different crazy knowledge that you have that you got from some crazy individual. Bugged out like wild bulls in a net. I don't understand. What are you saying? African, Judah, indigenous, 10 child. What are you talking about? I don't understand what you're saying. And thou shalt not prosper in thy ways. And you see Jake ain't prospering in their ways. The only ones that prosper to a certain degree are what? The ones that sell out. And even that is not looking too good for them. Because they're noticing that the grass is not greener on the other side. Because they have to do a lot of things to maintain that. And thou shalt be only oppressed and spoiled evermore, and no man shall save thee. See? No man shall buy thee. Does that sound familiar? No man shall save thee. It has a different Hebrew word here. But the bottom line is the same effect. The same thought. Now let's go... Right here, look, at 31st verse at the end. And thou shalt have none to rescue them. But it's just saying it in there's different points. No man shall save thee. None shall rescue them. No man shall buy thee. Meaning that no one is going to be able to save you from your situation, redeem you from that situation. Verse 33, the fruit of thy land and the fruit and all thy labor shall a nation which thou knowest not eat up. And thou shalt be only oppressed and crushed always. So in everything you do, you're oppressed and crushed always. Who has the greatest talent? Negroes, Latinos, Native American Indians. What happens? Esau has the funds and the money and the studios and the different things, and they exploit them. But who gets rich? Esau. Esau gets rich, and Jake, they'll do okay, but they got all the talent, and they getting the scraps from Longshank's table. Inside joke. Here it is. You doing all the work. You got all the creativity, and you getting the least money out of everybody else. Why is that? Is it because we're the minority? Inside joke. And thou shalt only be oppressed and crushed always, so that thou shalt be mad for the sight of thine eyes which thou shalt see. You know what it is? You busting your goddamn ass all fucking week. You even put in overtime. And then when you get your check, you see that they took a whole fucking bunch of money out that check. You said, man, I would have been better off just working the regular hour in the week than doing overtime. Because it seems like when you work overtime, they take a whole lot more out of your check. Madness. But that's it. So that thou shalt be mad for the sight of thine eyes which thou shalt see. Verse 37, and thou shalt become an astonishment, a proverb, and a byword among all nations, whither the Lord shall lead thee. Verse 43, the stranger that is within thee shall get up above thee very high, and thou shalt come down very low. And this is what's happened. This is why we're in this low condition. He shall lend to thee, and thou shalt not lend to him. What did the scripture say? That they shall lick the sores of Lazarus. That's these nations, that come and take the little bit that we do have, to take it. Setting up different stores and different, whether it's grocery stores or restaurants, clothing stores. They take the little bit that Jake has. He shall be the head, and thou shalt be the tail. And we are the fucking tail. We're the laughing stock. We're the bywords and the proverbs. Moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee, and shall pursue thee and overtake thee, till thou be destroyed, because thou hearkenest not unto the voice of the Lord thy power, to keep his commandments and his statutes which he commanded thee. And they shall be upon thee for what? For a sign and for a wonder. So when we watch this documentary, which I put in the description box, is Judah and Ephraim catching hell together. The curses upon them. And those curses will serve as a what? As a sign and a wonder. A sign and a wonder for what? That these are the Israelites, and upon thy seed forever. And that's forever is to what? So the Lord takes the curses off of us and puts it on our enemies, pursuant to Deuteronomy, the 30th chapter. Because thou servest not the Lord thy power with joyfulness and with gladness of heart, for the abundance of all things, for everything that he gave us. Therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee, in hunger and in thirst and in nakedness and in want of all things. So whatever we want, we have to go to Esau for it. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee. And Judah suffered the worst part of that yoke, but you did have Native American Indians and so-called Latinos that had yokes put upon them also. Not on a scale that Judah had, but still in all, they some of them did have that. So pretty much, that's it. We could keep going on. We could, end it there. You could go, and once you brothers watch this, if you get a chance to watch it, you there's a whole bunch of stuff in here. There's feminist movement and a whole kind of stuff you could go into in this whole documentary. Like I said, I put it in the description box. So if brothers want to watch it and do videos off it, knock yourself out, more edification. So with that, I pray that your brothers have been edified. To the next time I say, Shalom. He shall be the head, and thou shalt be the tail. And we are the fucking tail. We're the laughing stock. We're the bywords and the proverbs. Moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee, and shall pursue thee and overtake thee, till thou be destroyed, because thou hearkenest not unto the voice of the Lord thy power, to keep his commandments and his statutes which he commanded thee. And they shall be upon thee for what? For a sign and for a wonder. So when we watch this documentary, which I put in the description box, is Judah and Ephraim catching hell together. The curses upon them. And those curses will serve as a what? As a sign and a wonder.